I want to thank you for inviting the California Citizens Redistricting Commission to present at your meeting. As been said, my name is Trina Turner, Commissioner Turner, and I'm one of the 14 commissioners selected to draw the new electoral district lines following the 2020 census. But before I begin with the formal presentation, I just want to share a little bit about myself. I am Executive Director, as was mentioned, for Faith in the Valley, and I'm also an ordained pastor on staff at the Victory and Praise Church. And I chose to be a commissioner because it's almost like when you know better, you do better. Much like our vice mayor and council member just spoke, it was like I needed to get involved. I was drawn to something that I did not initially know about, but when I became aware of the importance of engagement in this process, it's where a lot of power is held. And I leaned in and was determined to be a part of it, just to ensure that I am representing all of California well. So in this redistricting basics presentation today, we're going to begin by going over who the commission is, what we do, and how you can get involved in the process. So on slide 2, we do have a reminder for you. And that reminder simply says, on slide 2.
Sorry, it's not allowing me to jump forward. Here we go.
There we go. Lots of jumping now. That's okay. On slide 2, California Government Code Section 8253 strictly forbids commissioners and staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting or official public input meeting. However, at any point, you are more than welcome to visit our website at wedrawthelinesca.org. wedrawthelinesca.org to provide input, and you'll find instruction on how to do so under the public comment section. So slide 3, what is redistricting? So we're trying really hard to make redistricting just exciting. Some says, oh, let's make it sexy. I don't know what that looks like for sure, but it's rather challenging. Redistricting is defined as drawing new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each elected official. It's defined by drawing new boundaries that determine which Californians are represented by each elected official. So on slide 4, why we draw lines. Why? You might be wondering why every 10 years? Well, every 10 years, it's important to redraw lines because our communities change. Priorities change, our interests, goals that make up the community, all of that change. People born, people die, and people move within California and out of California. Communities grow, communities shrink, and then areas where there were once roughly the same number of people all of a sudden become unequal. So these are some of the reasons why districts need to be redrawn. As communities change, the districts will need to be updated to reflect those changes. So your voice, one of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. How the district boundaries are configured will make the difference between empowering and maximizing voices or minimizing and muting those same voices. In most other states, as Dylan pointed out, politicians redraw districts and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. And by fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting process, more communities may have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. So speaking up about your community is critically important. It's important and it will help you keep your community whole to the extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality and the funding of your child's education or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable in shaping the new political boundaries. So how redistricting affects you? So here we thought it would be beneficial for us to break down how the redistricting affects you directly. So if you can see on the slide, there are a couple of different drawings. Number 1, power to the people. So the Voters First Act was historic in California, and it transferred the power of drawing the district maps away from politicians and gave the power directly to the people. Also, you see champion your issues. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one street to the next. Northern California might champion environmental and economic issues, while Central California, we might champion water and agricultural issues. And then Southern California might champion issues dealing with transportation, housing, and employment. And so you have your power to the people, champion your issues, funding priorities. Tied to the issue of electing representatives that champion your issues, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial interests at heart. When the time comes to build a budget, you want representation fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services such as education and water and fire protection. And then we have community boundaries. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help the commissioners understand where your community starts and where your community ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input to regarding their community that ultimately impacts the law and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. The road to fair representation. The US Constitution requires that every American receive as close to equal representation as possible in government. Every American receive as close to equal representation as possible. As populations of districts change over time, it can leave some people overrepresented and others underrepresented in government. And so redistricting evens out the population between districts. After the federal government publishes our updated census information, I know a lot of you were involved, a lot of us was involved in getting everyone to participate in the census count. But after that process, California must then redraw the boundaries of its congressional, of the state Senate, the state assembly, and the state board of equalization districts so that the districts correctly reflect the latest count of the state's population. So redistricting is based on the idea that each of our voices should be represented fairly by creating districts that have the same number of people. Census results are used to draw new maps every 10 years to account for the ways that the population have changed and moved across the states and districts. And at the federal level, reapportionment takes place to reallocate the US House seats among the states. So this too is done after each national census to ensure that seats are held by the state in proportion to the size of their population. So California currently has 53 House seats, and that we are anticipating that it will change as soon as we get the updated numbers from our Census Department. Historically, legislators have drawn maps that have allowed them to choose their voters rather than enabling voters to choose their representatives. This is key. Historically, legislators have drawn maps that allow them to choose their voters rather than enabling voters to choose their representatives. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give the people the power to choose their representatives. So redistricting matters. On slide 8, we've talked about how redistricting affects you, and I want to explain why independent redistricting matters. So democracy depends on the voters having the opportunity to choose their representatives. When elected officials redraw the lines of their own districts, they get to design their own territory and choose who their voters are. Kind of bizarre, but this slide highlights key terms in redistricting to help you understand why it's important to delegate the power of redistricting to people. So gerrymandering happens when the election district boundaries are drawn in a way that gives a particular set of people, a political party, a racial group, whatever, when it gives them an unfair political advantage over another. So the graph that you're looking at now It shows how in a jurisdiction with 50 people, on this one, it shows 60% orange people and 40% purple. But in a jurisdiction with 50 people, 5 districts can be drawn in multiple ways, but it's not always fair. The first 2 examples here show 2 ways to draw district lines in a fair manner, where the districts are drawn to reflect the population. You see it there? And then the 2 examples on the far right show ways to draw district maps in a manner that does not reflect the population, which is referred to as gerrymandering. This is why an independent commission, commissions like California's commission, were created to remove the politics from the process and to focus on the people. So we do have line drawing criteria. The commission has to follow, must follow this criteria in this order when drawing district maps. I'm learning it to be a very interesting process. So number 1, we have to follow this criteria and it has to be in this order. So when I say number 1, our first priority is districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. After that, as a priority, number 2, districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. Number 3, districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Number 5, districts should be geographically compact such that nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density, not shape. And then number 6, where practicable, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts. And Board of Equalization districts should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. In addition, the place of residence of any incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map, and districts may not be drawn for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, political candidate, or political party. Ooh, I know it's a lot. Slide 10. Different redistricting efforts. And so we have a lot. I'm so excited this particular cycle because we do have a lot of engagement, it seems to me, in redistricting. We are one of many redistricting efforts that's occurring in California. And so as you're hearing about redistricting, the commission thought it important that we explain the commission is redrawing districts for the state offices. And then you'll have counties, cities, school districts, water districts, and community college districts. They are also redrawing their districts at the same time. So if you're invited into a redistricting meeting, you want to make sure, yes, please, number 1, attend, participate in all of them as much as you have capacity to do so, but be clear in what type of redistricting effort you're going into. We wanted to bring this to your attention because they happen simultaneously and it can be confusing. So aside from being involved in the state redistricting process, we encourage you, yes, be involved in your local redistricting efforts. So I'm going to give you some history on redistricting. So prior to 2010, legislators in California drew the lines. Now, if the legislatures failed to properly draw the lines, the court drew the lines. And then in 2008, California voters, some of you would remember, passed Proposition 11, the Voters First Act, which authorized the creation of an independent commission to draw new district lines for the state Senate, state Assembly, and the Board of Equalization. In 2010, Proposition 20, the Voters First Act for Congress, added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission. So our goal as a commission is to spread the word that the people's role did not end with being counted in the census, and to collect valuable community input to assist us in the process of drawing these new districts. The 2010 Redistricting Commission was California's first independent commission. The 2020 Redistricting Commission is building upon their work and will leave behind detailed documents to assist the 2030 Commission when they perform their duties. So there are other states that also have independent commissions, including Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington. There was quite a rigorous process to get here. So for commissioner selection, the commissioners, we all went through a rigorous application process that attracted over 20,000 applicants in 2019. And then after an initial review, over 2,000 individuals completed a supplemental application. Then after a very thorough public review, 120 applicants, that was 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, and 40 others, were invited to interview, from which 60, 20 Dems, 20 Republicans, 10 other, were chosen to be presented to the legislature. Now, the California legislature was allowed to remove no more than 24 candidates, but they had an opportunity to make strikes, 8 from each pool, for consideration, which left a total of 36. The first 8 members, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, 2 others, were selected through a public drawing in July 2020. I was one of the first 8. It was a very interesting process, kind of lottery style. And I'm so proud and excited. I was the first draw for our 2020 commission. And then the final 6 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 others, were then carefully selected by the first 8 commissioners in August of 2020, taking several considerations into account to include, and balance out the commission to include political party, geography, race, gender, and expertise. So with that, I want to introduce to you your 2020 commissioners. Meet the 2020 commission. We are a 14-member commission made up of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 members not affiliated with either of those 2 parties. And so we have them listed there in order. We have Commissioners Israel Ahmad, Jane Anderson, Neil Fornashari, J. Ray Kennedy, Antonio Lamons, Sarah Sadwani, Derek Taylor, Linda Akutagawa, Alicia Fernandez, Patricia Sinai, Pedro Toledo, Angela Vasquez, Russell Yee, and of course myself, Trina Turner. So the commissioners are very diverse in geography, as we are in opinions and in expertise. We had 7 from Northern California, 7 from Southern California. There's 8 women, 6 men. We range in age from 30 to the 60s, those of us that's representing the high end. There are no NGO leaders, though. There are engineers. There are NGO leaders, I'm sorry. There are pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists. We have a lawyer, there's public servants. And I'd love to invite you to join us at any one of our commission meetings. They're all held online due to COVID-19 currently. And you can join us by going onto our website and looking for a link to attend. We recently have made a shift in our meetings. Most of them took place during the day hours, and now we're having some evening meetings as well to ensure that we're allowing everyone an opportunity to participate. And if you need an interpreter to participate in a meeting, we ask that you just notify the commission 5 business days prior to a meeting to request interpreter services. And the commission will attempt to contact or contract with an interpreter in the requested language. So what are our duties? After the education sessions, which this is the season that we're in right now, this presentation that we're doing, the commission will hold public meetings and accept public input to assist it in drawing the new electoral maps. The commission will draw maps for 4 different government bodies. For Congress, about 53, depending on what we end up with as a number. State Senate will be 40. State Assembly, 80, and Board of Equalization, 4. So on this example before you, we've used an example for Sacramento to demonstrate what the different maps could look like for each district type. To ensure we're reaching out to everyone, we kind of did a divide and conquer. So from February to May, we are conducting these redistricting basic presentations to educate the public about the redistricting process. And we've divided the state into 11 outreach zones, and we've labeled them A through K. And that's just to better manage our outreach efforts. and to build relationships with community groups such as yours, we are eager to engage with all communities. And we're more than happy to set up a redistricting basics presentation with any group that requests one. We plan to have this presentation available in video form as well. So we've recorded our video and that will be available soon. And so if there is a request that you have and the timing's not working out, will be available in video as well. So slide 16, let's talk a little bit about the communities of interest. So when drawing maps, we have to be mindful of communities of interest. We can obtain the city and county information, but we need the communities of interest information from you. We need that from our Californians. Communities of interest are defined as a concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. That's a mouthful, and I'd like to say it one more time. Communities of interest. You're going to hear a lot about submitting your communities of interest. We have a communities of interest tool. We'll see in a minute. It says communities of interest are defined as a concentrated population that shares common social and economic interests, ones that should be included within a single district. It's your desire for who you want to be included in a single district for purposes of effective and fair representation. So examples include areas in which the people share similar living standards, maybe have similar cultures, use the same transportation facilities, have similar work opportunities, or have access to the same media. People can belong to multiple communities of interest. So keep in mind that a community of interest is not the same as a district, but communities of interest are key building blocks that will make up a district. So some ways to describe your community. You can talk about your community in geographic terms, like, the waterways, we're out by the Delta, we're out, whatever, rural or urban, or maybe the mountains you can use in reference. So you can use geographic descriptions, boundaries. You can talk between cities, towns, counties, school areas, or just things that you have in common. The main thing is your participation. Your input is vital to the success of the commission. And we've identified the ways you can participate in 3 simple steps. So describe, draw, and send. Describe your community. Tell us about your community. What are your shared interests? If you don't define your community, someone else will. So you want to make sure that you share your interests. What brings you together what brings you together as a community? What is important to your community? Are there nearby areas you want to be in a district with, or nearby areas you don't want to be in an area with? Why or why not? Tell us that. Describe it. And then you can also draw your community on a map. That can be free flow if you got it like that. We do have a community of interest tool that's very intuitive and easy to use. Or you can send your testimony directly to the commission. Dial in, verbally say it, email it. All of this can be done by using an online tool that allows you to describe, draw, and send your input to the commission by visiting drawmycacommunity.org. I know that's a second website I've given you, but this one takes you directly to the COI tool, or the Community of Interest tool. So ways to provide public input. You can provide public input to the commission in several ways, including submitting your input through the Communities of Interest mapping tool. By visiting our website, that's the first one, we draw the lines, ca.org, we draw the line ca.org, or by emailing us, and of course we still get postal mail. So the Supreme Court ruling, COVID-19 has delayed many things. It has shifted, it has changed, it has impacted many things, including our ability to access census data to help us draw a district map. So February 12th, 2021, the Census Bureau announced it would deliver redistricting data to all states by September 30th, 2021. So a 2-month delay after July 31st in the state receiving the census data means that the commission's final maps would be due 2 months after December 15th. So we're working with the legislature and others to minimize the impacts of the delay on the 2022 elections, but it's been pretty fluid so far. So the timeline that we're currently working with, The U.S. Census Bureau continues to update us about the expected availability of census, and we will adjust our timeline as needed. But right now, between now and I guess we began actually in February, between February and May, we're doing these education presentations called California Redistricting Basics. And again, any group, you know, from any walk of life, any part of whatever if they're interested, we are interested in coming to do or presenting for them a redistricting basics. We want people to understand and participate. And then from June to October, we will have public input meetings. That's when we'll be receiving. People are right now submitting COI information, but that's when we'll start to consider and look at that information. September 30th, our proposed timeline has census data expected to the state. October 31st, the census data is expected to the commission. And then we have November through December, public input meetings, line drawing sessions, where we will receive all that information and began putting maps to paper and putting it before all of you, and we'll go back and forth there. Draft district maps will be released in December. January, there will be more public input meetings because we would have received some feedback and line drawing sessions. And then February, district maps are released. February 15th is when the final district maps are due to the Secretary of State. So today, again, if we have time for Q&A, but before, again, I need to remind you that nothing I receive can look like public input. Can't happen outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting. However, at any point, please go to those websites. WeDrawTheLineCA.org to provide input. It just can't happen with me as a single commissioner on this presentation today. So slide 22, because we want to engage the public in the redistricting process, we are conducting sessions like this today prior to going out for public input. And to request an educational session, you can do that online. Or by emailing Marcy Kaplan at crc.ca.gov. So please also follow us on social media at WeDrawTheLineCA.